Hey guys, so I've noticed on Fallout 76, a lot of players don't use shotguns at all. So I decided to make a few shotgun builds and test them out to see if it's actually good or really bad. And it turns out they're actually extremely useful in many scenarios, especially in boss fights and large events. So whether you're a person who's deciding to try it out, or if you're already making shotgun builds and want to improve upon it, I'll show you guys a few ways to make some decent shotgun builds. They're actually extremely versatile. They're not just used for close range. You can make some shotguns that shoot as far as snipers if you really want to, so you're not missing out on ranged fights. So before we really get into the tutorial, I should let you know that for a shotgun build to succeed, you need to make sure that you cripple your enemies. You get all sorts of bonuses for crippled enemies, so we're going to make sure that you succeed in doing that. Also, another thing you should know about this build, you don't have to necessarily use shotguns to make a shotgun build. What I mean by that is you can turn certain rifles and even light machine guns into shotgun builds. The most important thing is that it shoots at least 3 projectiles for it to count as a shotgun. And there are many weapons that have modifications that can turn them into something that works with a shotgun build. So in this tutorial, I will show you how to set up your serums, your perk cards, your weapon mods, your legendary mods, and show you what type of weapons are available for the shotgun build, because not all of the weapons are going to be shotguns. Alright, so I do want to show you guys some of the shotguns I use for the build, and keep in mind the mods and perk cards you use for this build is very versatile. You could go for VATs or no VATs or heavy or small arms. It doesn't matter what you use, it depends on what your style is. So I'm going to show you guys some of the normal shotguns starting with the pump. This is honestly my favorite one because it is versatile. If you take a look at it, I do have my mods on. I'll talk to you guys about the mods later, but if you look in the bottom left, you can see that the damage is pretty decent. Our perks are actually buffing it even more, but it's not showing it. So we'll test it later and show you. And on top of that, look at the range. That's range you don't often see on shotguns. Usually you see that kind of range on like a rifle or a pistol. So keep in mind shotguns are not just for close quarters. They can be used mid-range as well. And there are some that can be used as snipers. Another shotgun I like to use is the combat shotgun. I did modifier for full auto, so this is meant for bigger fights. It can cripple and kill really quickly, and I use it in VATs. So it is very useful, but if you don't like it shooting that much, you can make it semi-auto if you want to. So a lot of people don't realize that you can turn a laser rifle into a shotgun. So this is more for close to mid-range fights, but it is full auto. You can even make it semi-auto if you want to, or you can turn it into a sniper shotgun. Now, not a lot of people know about this. So most people use the Tesla rifle to full auto the enemies, but you can charge it up like a shotgun. So if you take a look, it has 5 projectiles, not just 1. So that means it counts as a shotgun. But if you don't like to charge it up, you can just shoot it like this. So not a lot of people use the Gauss shotgun, but it does allow you to charge it up, which means you're getting more damage out of it with each shot. So it does hit pretty hard, but it is a slower shotgun. There's also the double barrel. If you like cold shoulder, that works with this build as well. It hits hard, but it can only hold 2 shells at a time unless you put quad on it. So it is your choice. Now a lot of people like the dragon because it is a mix between a shotgun and a rifle. So if you take a look at the range, it's at 272, which is really good. So you can get close to sniping enemies at long range. Also, another thing not a lot of people know about is the Gatling Plasma. You can modify it to be a shotgun. So if you look in the bottom right, you see where it says Beam Splitter? That means it turns the one plasma round into several. So as you can see here, it fires 6 of them. So you're someone who wants to use a shotgun as a heavy weapon, you can use a hybrid, which is this. You can run heavy gunner perks and shotgun perks at the same time, and get even more damage out of this. The harpoon gun can also be modified into a shotgun. So if you look in the bottom right, it turns your harpoons into little harpoons, like shrapnel. So if you look over in the left side, it fires 7 rounds at a time. So it is slow firing and it only holds 3 harpoons at a time, but it hits really, really hard, and it causes bleeding effects. Also, most importantly, we do have the pepper shaker, which is the hybrid between heavy gunners and shotguns, and it is also very versatile. So if you want to work in a heavy shotgun, you can do this too. Okay, so let's briefly go over the serums that directly affect shotgun builds. So let's start with Adrenal Reaction. This is really good for when you're fighting a lot of little enemies. You're getting bonuses each time you get a kill. The next one is good for those who use VATS. It's called Eagle Eyes. You're getting more critical damage out of your shots, so run that. And then finally, believe it or not, Twisted Muscles actually help you because you want limb damage. The reason you're doing that is because once you cripple an enemy, you're getting bonuses. So it's good that you're crippling them as quickly as you can. Also make sure you're running the 3 mutation perk cards that benefit you for serums. So Starch Genes, Strange in Numbers, and Class Freak 3 stars. Once you run those, your serums will get a little bit stronger, you get less negative effects, and they're protected, so if you use Radaway, then you'll be fine. You won't lose them. Okay, so there are other weapons that can be turned into shotguns, like the plasma rifle, but I showed you guys the majority of weapons you could use for this build, so first figure out what kind of weapon you want, and then after that, we're going to get straight to legendary mods and internal mods. We're going to figure out what kind of priorities you want with your weapon. So some people would prefer a weapon that fights really hard. If that's the case, then you want to use something that's full auto or a heavy gunner. Or maybe some of you guys want to use something that you can use casually when you explore the world. If that's the case, you can run a gun like this, the pump shotgun, or turn a laser rifle into a laser shotgun. There are all sorts of ways you can use these shotguns. So if I were you guys, I'd grab a few weapons that pique your interest and turn all of them into shotgun builds. So depending on what kind of scenario you're in, you can switch back and forth. Just remember, the most important thing is crippling. So we're going to go for stuff that helps with crippling, but if you don't want to do that, you can also work in cards that help you with VATS, or you can work in explosives into it. It's really up to you guys, because these are very versatile. So for me, I am going to use a Kabloom because I didn't know that you can put on your own legendary mods onto these guns until recently. So I'm going to turn this into a really nice shotgun that can help with the build. So to start things off, let's go into the internal mods first before we get into legendaries. So if I were you guys, I would go for something that increases the range and power. So there are all sorts of mods for every shotgun, and each of them have different options. But I personally usually go for Prime because it bumps up the damage and bumps up the range. Now Prime does lower the fire rates for most shotguns and other weapons, but I'm completely okay with it. And for this shotgun, it looks like Prime doesn't even affect the fire rate. So let's run it. Okay, next we're going to choose our barrel. Now this part is very important because this will affect the range, VATS accuracy, and even VATS cost for a lot of shotguns. So I personally prioritize range, and the reason for that is because I want to be able to engage at longer distances and not feel like I'm being kept back while other people are killing everything. So I'm going to run long barrel. Unfortunately, most long barrels do increase the AP cost when you use VATS, but I'm completely okay with it because this gun shoots quite slow, so my AP can catch up. If you are using something that's full auto, just be a little careful if you put on long barrel because your AP costs will drain your AP quite quickly. So next I'm going to put on the stock. So it's really up to you guys what you want. I generally put on a line stock, and it says in the bottom left that the accuracy is super low now, but I'll be honest, when we run this gun, the accuracy is going to be fine. It's only going to struggle when you start going for mid to long range. So unfortunately, this gun does not have sights you can put on, but for most other guns, I do recommend using glow sights because they do increase VAT's accuracy by 10%, unless they change that in the future. So, yeah. And then muzzle, if you are someone that wants to put in stealth damage into your shotgun, go for it. However, I'm going to leave mine the way it is because I usually play a little aggressively. Okay, so we have the shotgun right now. Not too fast, not too slow, but it hits quite hard. And the nice thing about the Kabloom is it does have some what looks like poison damage, so that'll be really nice. Okay, so for our shotgun build, we do have a few choices. I personally, after testing everything, recommend that you fit Furious into the build. And the reason for that is because shotguns, they fire multiple projectiles at a time, which means your stacks will shoot up each time you fire your gun. We're going to work in VATS, Furious, and general cards that buff your damage. And if you were to be a heavy gunner, you can also work in heavy gunner perks into your build, and I'll point them out later. But before we do that, let's get into the legendary mods. So since I mentioned that we're going to use an Onslaught build for the build, we're going to put on Furious, and then for the second star, you can run whatever you want. You can run Crippling, you can run Explode, you can run Vital. I'm going to test out Vital because I do like to use VATS. And then for the third star, you can run Reload Speed or VATS Optimized. I'm going to run Lightweights because I want to be able to put this shotgun away in my stash without it using a lot of space. And then for your 4-star, it really depends on what you like. I do recommend cards that benefit you when you cripple enemies because you can cripple anything quite easily. So you do have choices like I do recommend Bullies, which I'll show you later. But there's also Fractures, which causes an explosion when you cripple an enemy. So that's really good for a weapon that has, explode in it. Or if you have elemental damage in your shotgun like this thing, you can run a poison effect as your 4-star, or if your shotgun has fire damage, like some laser rifles, you can work in fire damage into it. Then you can run in Pyromaniacs, so it's up to you. So for me, I'm going to run Furious for Onslaught build. I'm going to run Vital for VATS, Lightweight for storage, and then Bullies. Okay, so Furious, Vital. It does say that's going to minus out damage, but they'll be worth it, for me personally. If you do like explosive, run it. Lightweight. As you can see, since this is a shotgun with poison damage, Vipers does work with it, but I'm going to run Bullies, and the reason is this right here. If you look, it says 25% damage per crippled limb your target has. So the reason I recommend Bully for almost all shotguns is if you were to cripple all the limbs, like legs and arms, that's 100% more damage on your enemy. And there is a card where if you hit a limb, it'll share some of its damage to other limbs. So you can easily get over 100% more damage if you were to just simply aim for one arm, one leg, or a head. Okay, so we got all the stars. This is for me personally. You can run whatever you want. And now we're going to get into perks. Okay, so remember, when we get into this, we need to prioritize Onslaught, Crippling, VATS, and general damage for your weapon. So let's do Onslaught first, because I know some people get a little confused with it. So to start off, we run Gorilla Expert, Gorilla Master, and Gunslinger Expert. The only time you run Gunslinger Master is if you use a very slow-firing shotgun, like the Dragon. If you're using shotguns that fire quickly and has a lot of projectiles, do not run this card, or else you're going to run out of stacks. Okay, so these 3 perks do complement the Furious mod, therefore making it a full Onslaught build. So for those who don't understand Onslaught builds, I'll quickly go over it. So if you look at the first bonus, so let's say 1% reload speed per Onslaught stack and plus 3 max stacks, basically what that's saying is your max stacks, which is the second part, is basically the maximum bonus you can get based on the amount of projectiles you fire or hit. So let's say you use a semi-auto gun that only shoots 1 bullet at a time and you hit an enemy 5 times quickly, you're getting 5 stacks. And each time you raise your stacks with these cards, you're bringing it up to a maximum of 20 if you were to include Furious. So if you add it up, that's 9, plus 3 is 12, plus 5 is 17, and plus 3 is 20. So you have a total of 20 max stacks. Now let's say you fire an enemy 20 times with a bullet with each shot. You're going up to 20. So that means your 20 stacks, you multiply that with your first bonus. So let's say your reload speed. That means you're getting 20% reload speed. You multiply 20 with plus 5% range damage to close enemies. So what's 5 times 20? That's 100% more damage if you're right up to your enemies. Or range weak spot. So what's 1 times 20? That's 20% more damage towards weak spots. So like the head for humans, or maybe the fusion core for certain robots, you're getting 20% more damage on their weak spot. And if you were to look at the Kabloom's Furious mod, what's 5 times 20? That's another 20% more damage. So that's what an Onslaught build is. Okay, so now that we got the Onslaught cards on, let's put on the cards related to shotgun builds. So anything that helps with crippling and that helps with multiple projectile weapons. So most of them are actually in strength. So let's go over them in order. So to start off, I'm going to put on Easy Target. It helps with more damage when you cripple an enemy, but I'm only going to put on 2 stars because I do need space for other cards. The only time it's okay to run a 3-star is if you're able to take off your weight reduction cards. But for me, I can't do that, so I have to run this. Next is Love to Spread. So you're basically gaining more range with your shotguns. Run that. Now this card is very important. So Scattershot allows you to share the damage you deal with all your limbs. So let's say you hit an enemy in the arm or in the head. All the other limbs are going to take 20% of that damage towards their limbs. So you can cripple an enemy very quickly if you were to run Scattershot. And when I say cripple, I mean cripple everything. The next card is Shotgun Champ. So 10% damage to cripple targets per projectile your weapon fires. So if you don't fully understand what that means, let's say your weapon fires 5 projectiles. Now you get 10% damage per projectile. So if you have 5 projectiles, that's 5 times 10, so 50% more damage towards that cripple target. Or with this shotgun, it has 8, so we're getting 80% more damage to a cripple target. So this is very beneficial for weapons that fire a lot of projectiles. Okay, so we do have all the shotgun cards for strength. However, if you are someone who wants to run the Pepper Shaker or the Gatling Plasma, if you are willing and able to unequip weight reduction cards and strongback, you can run the heavy gunner cards. So bringing the big guns, Bulletstorm, and if you do want to sacrifice one of these cards, you can also put on Lock and Load, because all of that requires 8 slots. So you do have to make a small sacrifice on one of your shotgun cards for it to work. But once you do that, you can make a heavy gunner shotgun hybrid build. Okay, now let's put on perception cards. So it is kind of weird because online, for some reason, a lot of sources say that shotguns are not considered small arms. However, when I tested these cards on my shotgun, they work. So if you use a shotgun, generally a lot of them are small arms. So let's run some of these cards. So if you don't know which ones to run, I'll help you pick out which ones I prefer. So to start off, let's do Awareness. This is just for VATS. The more accuracy, the better. Now, I would use Center Masochist. However, the thing is, I aim for the head usually, so I'm not going to run that. However, if you are someone who doesn't use VATS a lot, this is honestly the perfect card for you, so run it if you're not using VATS. Also, Concentrated Fire is pretty good if you're using a full auto shotgun, but if you're using one that is slow firing, this is completely optional to use. Okay, there is Crack Shot, which increases range and accuracy, but it's only for aiming down sights, so this is only good for non-VATS users. Okay, so this one, some people run it, some people don't. However, I do recommend it if you fight bosses because you're going to have other people dealing all sorts of elemental damage to your target. So this just allows you to deal more damage because you're going to cripple your enemies. So right off the bat, your enemy will be taking 10% more damage. And mine does poison, so it's actually going to do 20%. The more elemental effects you have, the better. Okay, next, this is completely optional. I only recommend running this card if you run a lot of speed bonus cards. So cards that help you run faster will benefit this card. So if you do run those, run Fast Fighter. You will be able to reload faster when you run faster. Ground Pounder is also a nice card. It does help with reload, but it also helps with hip fire. So this is good for both VATS and non-VATS users. So I run it. Next, I run Number Cruncher. So for those who don't understand what this means, all you have to do is just pull out your gun, inspect it, and look at the bottom left, and look at your AP cost. So for me, it's 23 per shot. So all you have to do is multiply that by 2, and that's the percentage bonus you're getting on top of your base damage. So 23 times 2 is 46% more damage for the shotgun. So I personally run that. Okay, next is Skeet Shooter. So it basically just helps with your accuracy and spread, and it helps a lot. So run it. It's only 1 star. And then we also have Tank Killer. So ignoring armor is nice because a lot of enemies are armored. So run it. So this card, I honestly believe, is one of the really nice cards for the build. So it's basically a slightly weaker version of the Bullies mod, but they stack. So your Bullies does 25% more damage per crippled limb. This does 20%. So you're dealing 45% more damage per crippled limb. So I'm going to take off Fast Fighter for this, but I think it's worth it. That is a tremendous amount of damage if you fight a boss. Okay, so we got Strength and Perception out of the way. For Endurance, I personally just recommend cards that help with quality of life. I don't think they're too involved with a shotgun build. Same for Charisma. The only cards that might help you if you're using Charisma would be Tenderizer, if you were to be using, let's say, like a heavy shotgun build. Or if you want to defend your teammates a bit more, you could run Suppressor with the build, but it's completely optional. It doesn't help with shotgun builds exclusively. Okay, next for Intelligence, there's actually not a lot of cards that help with the build, only very specific builds. So right off the bat, one of the more specific builds would be Demolition Expert. So if you run a shotgun with Explosive mod and Fractures, or it has explosive damage integrated into the shotgun, this would be a really good card to use. I'm going to run it because I am switching around, so I'm going to keep that on. And also, Science would be really good for shotguns that are science-based, so like plasma rifle shotguns, laser rifle shotguns, pepper shakers that were converted into energy ammo, stuff like that. It would help if you have a science card on. And Stabilize would be good for those who use heavy shotgun builds. It'll be nice to have a lot of accuracy with a shotgun build. Also, another card I forgot to mention, if you do have a shotgun that has fire damage in it, run this as well. It'll help. Okay, so next we're going to get into Agility. We're going to work in even more damage cards. So since we are a Furious build, we do use up a lot of our slots, so we're only left with 8. So this part, you do have to make a few sacrifices with your build for it to work out. So for me, I do recommend Adrenaline. If you fight a lot of little enemies, your bonus damage can go all the way up to 100%. So this is nice to run. But if you're fighting bosses quite often, you don't need this card. Next, this card is super important. It is called Enforcer. So it helps with stagger and limb damage, but the most important thing is the limb damage. The earlier you cripple an enemy, the faster you get all those bonuses over in strength and perception. So make sure you have Enforcer on. It helps you cripple legs, arms, and heads very easily and very quickly. Now there are cards like Gorilla. I know a lot of people run these, but I'll be honest, the bonus is so small for the amount of space it takes to run this card, so I personally do not recommend Gorilla, believe it or not. So I would skip out on this. There's another card I did not know even existed until just now. It's called Modern Renegade. So increase hipfire and increase limb damage. That is a lot of extra limb damage you can do if you stack that with Enforcer. So honestly, that is up to you if you want to run it. I'm actually going to try it right now and experiment. Because if they stack, that's 150% more limb damage. Another card that is pretty important for VATS users is Gun Fu. Basically, it allows you to automatically swap from enemy to enemy with each kill, and you get bonuses. So, now that I'm looking at this card, I'm starting to realize that it is pretty important. So I'm going to run the 2-star version and replace Adrenaline. So, the nice thing is there are a lot of options for agility cards, but the sad news is there's not enough space for all of them. So sadly you do have to make sacrifices to make this work out. Okay, finally, you had to go to luck, because if you are someone that uses VATS, you do need to put on a few VATS cards. So right off the bat, the most important one in my opinion is better criticals. So unfortunately, I don't have limit breaking on my armor right now, but if you don't know what that is, it reduces the cost for criticals, and if you run that with critical savvy, you can do a critical every other shot. So it is quite nice to have savvy with limit breaking, but since I don't have limit breaking, I'm just gonna have to run savvy alone and do a critical maybe once every 4 shots. 4-leaf clover is also nice, but I don't have the space for it, so I'm gonna skip out on it. When you miss your shots, you get your critical meter filled just a little bit. A card I will run though is Grim Reaper Sprint. So for each kill you get, you gain back your AP based on your luck. Since my luck is pretty high, I'm going to run this. It's good for little enemies. Psychopath is also nice for those that use a bit of a hybrid between VATS and no VATS. Basically, when you fire regularly, you fill up your critical meters, so when you switch over to VATS, you can do a critical right away. And for those who are heavy gunner builds, this card is the most important card, because this is the best way you can get limb damage with a heavy weapon. So, as you can see, increases stagger chance and limb damage by 75%. So this is how you cripple enemies with the Pepper Shaker or the Gatling Plasma, or the Harpoon. Okay, so we got all the cards on. So just remember, Bethesda may change up a lot of these cards in the future, but if you fully understand how a shotgun build works, by the time they change everything, you already know how to adapt to the new cards. So I wouldn't stress out too much if these cards look a little different if you are someone that's watching in the future. Also, another thing I forgot to mention is my legendary cards are all letters. You can run whatever letter cards you want. Also, if you are someone that use explosives on your shotguns, then something that would help you a lot would be far-flung fireworks. It just increases the chances of them exploding when you kill them, so it's very nice. Also, if you want a little bonus damage for bosses like the EN06 or the Snake, use taking one for the team. By the time you get hit, you do 40% more damage, but it's optional. I personally prefer all the letters because I need all of these cards, and I feel like I want even more, but I can't. So, yeah. Okay, so now that we got the build set up, I'm going to go out in the world and test it out on all sorts of enemies. The first one I want to test it out on is a Deathclaw, because a Deathclaw can tank damage. So I want to show you the crippling damage it can do to a Deathclaw. I'm going to have to torture him because we have all these crippling bonuses. So I'm going to just shoot, let's say his arm, leg, or head, and we'll see what it does to his body. Look at that. Just shooting him in the head crippled his entire body. The only thing that's been spared is his tail. So when you cripple an enemy, they do heal from it very slowly. As you can see, he's already gaining back some limb health, but it takes a while. Look at that, I just re-crippled him. Let's finish him off.
God, it's definitely getting worse, all right. You're doing great. Hold out a little longer. Oh, no, no, no. Clyde, hurry. That big thing is fast. And it's looking mighty hungry. Don't stop now. Shoot that thing. What the heck? You got the juice turned too high, Clyde.
So that's really it for the build. So shotgun builds are quite versatile and they're pretty fun to use, especially since a lot of people are not familiar with it, so it is a totally different playstyle, but I recommend you guys give it a try. Maybe save a slot in the punch card machine so you can make yourself a shotgun build that actually works pretty well. Just remember, some of these perks and mods might change in the future, but if you do understand the changes, then you can easily adapt into new perk cards and mods and make your shotgun build just as good, if not better, in the future. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the build, and I'll see you guys around. Peace out.